Hello and welcome to Encounters. Today we are in a festive mood because one of our visiting scholars, Macy Wang, is leaving us, and we will send her off with a bit of a bang today. Macy has been with us since beginning of December last year, so for about 6 months by now. And she came from Huazhong University of Science and Technology, which is one of the top 5 or top 6 universities in China. She studies there journalism, and she wants to compare the Chinese version of journalism to the American type of journalism, and we will hear from her about that. But when she arrived, she immediately indicated that she wanted to do theory and praxis. So the first thing I suggested was that she would come to Amherst Media to look around and to take some training at whatever. And she has become very good at it. She knows how to run her own shows by now. So as an opening question, Macy, first of all, welcome. An opening question would be, what did you find out about American journalism?
Well, there are so many differences between the two countries as regards to the press, because we represent two totally different ideologies. Well, I think the Chinese press has always been functioning as the mouthpiece of the government, while the American press is regarded to be the fourth estate, right? So compared with American journalism, I think our Chinese press is subject to more limitations. We don't enjoy a high degree of freedom as the American press does. So as a Chinese journalist, there's still a lot of minefields and forbidden zones that you're not able to lay a finger on. So because the traditional media are still heavily controlled by the government. But thanks to the boom of social media, this situation is changing now. You know, the social media is playing a very important role in the popular life in China.
So you're indicating that the press, the media, are still very much controlled by the party or by the top of society. But if I would take the role of a critique of the American system, I would say here the control is not there, the censorship is not there, but that doesn't mean that our media are covering the whole picture themselves. They are also very biased and very focused on some things and not interested at all in other things. That's why we have Amherst Media to compensate and to balance that out. And by the way, I forgot to introduce my co-pilot here, Jim Lesko, the Executive Director of Amherst Media, with whom you've worked as well. So how would you respond to that observation, that of course it's a different kind of control, different kind of output, but in the end the Chinese media nor the American media are giving us the whole picture?
Well, I really don't know how, because I think the main difference, I will answer your question in another way. That before I came to the United States, people told me a lot of stereotypes about the society, like individualism, assertiveness, and self-determination. But the thing that impresses me most is the logic of this society. We can say the most characteristic feature is institutionalization. We can say that. All things are done according to some rules, as long as the rules are written in the book right there. No one would try to think about bypassing it. When something is done, if you're responsible for it, you should take the responsibility. If you deserve to enjoy the fruit of your work, you will too. So with all the people obeying the rules automatically, I think the whole society could run very well. So I think the United States set up a very good example of institutionalization for China, because rules and regulations are not working so well in China right now. I think it is because of the special situation of our country. You know, we all know that China is big, huge, both demographically and geographically, with a population of 1.3 billion people. So I remember that one of the officials of United Nations once said, the East China is like Europe and the West China is like Africa. So how can the Europe and Africa follow the same rules, even if the rules are perfect? They can't be applied to all places in China. Actually, our government has always been trying to narrow the gap between East and the West. We do take some necessary measures like the Western Development Strategy, which is specially made for the West. But I think it just takes time. It takes time for us to witness these changes. Yeah.
Have you, during your time here, been able to travel around a bit and see other parts of the US?
I went. Yeah, during the spring break, I went to the South, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida. Yeah.
But what you said about the East and the West in China, doesn't that apply to the North and the South of this country as well?
Well, I think there are still some cultural differences between East and the West in America. The food is quite different, and the thing is that I think the eastern part of American is more academic, it's more civilized. I think, and why in the South I saw people. When I was in Nashville, I saw a lot of street musicians, and people are very wild.
Can I ask a question? Did you check out the newspapers and the television and radio in those locations?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. No, I wondered because sometimes when we travel around the United States, we used to have what was called regionalism. You know, like very specific sounds. People talked a certain way, ate certain foods, and that's slowly being lost in the United States. It's slowly, you can get Burger King anywhere down the whole coast, right? You can pull off the highway and get certain fast food. So the United States is becoming less and less regional and having very specific differences in certain things, but in others not necessarily. And I think it's more the morals and sometimes the values that don't necessarily change and reflect a national thing. So I was wondering, going back to your point about social media, and did you notice any changes how we use it here as the student body of UMass? Did you get involved in using your social media heavily here with people?
No, I set up an account on Facebook.
Okay.
Actually, the social media is playing more and more important roles in our Chinese public life. We have renren.com, which is Chinese version of Facebook. We have microblog, which is Chinese version of Twitter. And these social media are exerting powerful influence on our public affairs. I can give you a very good example. Last year in China, there was a very heated called network incident called Guo Meimei scandal. Well, Guo Meimei is a 20-year-old young, beautiful young lady, and she showed off her expensive Hermes bags and Maserati cars on her microblog, and she claimed to be the general manager of the Red Cross. And the young lady didn't realize that she stepped on a very sensitive nerve and aroused a national questioning, almost a turmoil, I think, against the credibility of the Red Cross. And the controversy was so heated that the Red Cross had to hold a press conference to clarify it. And finally, we got to know the young lady herself made up the title, and all her expensive items were given by her boyfriend, who used to be the board member of the Red Cross. And it's very complicated to explain, but the public didn't buy it. And the consequences along with it is the Red Cross has been receiving fewer and fewer donations since then. And some local Red Cross received nothing. Yeah. So from this scandal, we can see that it shows that the general mistrust of the government or the government-backed institutions which lacked transparency in the past. And it also shows us the power and the impact of the social media, which really provide a platform for the public to speak, to express their ideas, and to supervise the government.
Tell us, what's it been like living in the Amherst area? We're known for a lot of things. One of the things is we all have opinions and we express them, so we want to know, what's your opinion of Amherst? What's it like living? Opinion. How did you like living in Amherst?
Well, I have learned a lot here. This past 5 months means a lot to me. I don't want to talk about the specific knowledge I have learned. Actually, I do learn a lot of American idioms. Thank you, Jim. And thank all my coworkers in Amherst Media that really taught me a lot. The point that I want to make here is that in the past 5 months, by immersing myself into this unique culture, which is quite different from mine, that, for example, being an intern in Amherst Media, besides learning how to be a good camera person, how to direct the shoots, I've also been observing how Americans run a non-profit, community-driven TV station, even though I still don't quite get it. And
you're not alone, trust me.
And being an auditor in UMass, by taking some courses, I got to know that how American students contribute to their classes. And being the youngest member of the Round World International Women, I met women I met all kinds of women from all over the world, and I got to know how they hold up the half sky in their families as well as their own societies. And also being an English learner in Jones Library, which is the public library in Amherst area, I can see that some American citizens are trying very hard to build up a civil society by taking their own parts in the public service and by doing the voluntary work. So I think those experiences are so invaluable for me because they broaden my eyesight, extend my horizon thinking, and reshape my outlook towards life in the world in some perhaps very subtle ways that I have not recognized. And more importantly is that by immersing myself into this culturally diverse society, I think I'm opening my mind to a world of possibilities. Finally, I find that there are more ways and more perspectives to look at the world than there are books in the Jones Library. So this is the most important thing I have learned in the Amherst area, and I also believe that it will be more clearer for me to figure out what on earth I have learned when I go back to China and look backwards and connect all the dots. So perhaps I will write a novel about my American experience when I go back. And all you guys must do me a favor to buy one.
No, we will. But,
buy more than one.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I would also like to reverse the question then. What kind of advice would you give us coming from China?
Wow.
Because I'm sure that there is something wrong here as well.
Yeah, of course. There are more ways for a country with a history of 200 years to learn from a country with a history of 5,000 years, you know. Compared with American people, I think our Chinese people take a more modest and humble attitude towards other cultures, which are quite different from ours. We tend to be more open-minded about the cultural inclusiveness. Did I get that right? Mm-hmm. We are more open-minded about cultural inclusiveness. I remember that the cultural relativism affirms that one culture has no absolute criteria for judging another culture's noble or law. And there is also a very old Chinese saying which goes like, 己所不欲，勿施于人. Anyone know what that means? No?
Not me.
I think the translation could be like, always put yourself into others' shoes. That if you feel that it hurts, it might hurt the person too. So I think for the American people, when you deal with another culture, you should not look at it by simply drawing on your Western eyes, your Western concepts, your Western terms, and Western experience. You should have more empathy, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's
well
a wise
put.
statement, yes, indeed.
Very well put. At the university, did you find it difficult initially to find a place where you were comfortable, or was it a learning institution that welcomed, and are you referring to some of that empathy was lacking thereof?
Yeah. Yes, I think my American classmates are very friendly to me.
Okay.
They're all very friendly to me. I do have to admit that the American students, they're independent and critical thinking, their unique perspectives, their broad interest, and their strong self-confidence and team spirit. Those colleges impressed me very much. In our last class, Communication for Sustainable Social Change, the focuses of the students' presentations range from, environment, population, natural resources, poverty, children, women, and races. The whole class was like a feast of ideas, and topics like a real man doesn't buy girls and invisible children. Those angles and perspectives are so creative and original. And more importantly, I think from their presentations, I could read their minds. Their outlook towards life and the world, and their inner passion about the globe, as well as their ambitiousness and fearlessness, I think. So those are the qualities that are just what our Chinese students lack and should learn to establish. Compared with American students, I think our Chinese students are more, inward-looking, diligent, and humble, modest, with great self-control. But anyway, they are more likely to play it safe by following some rules and regulations which are already there, because they are afraid of making mistakes. I know that some of them have great dreams in their heart, but then they dare not to speak it out, as my American classmate Ian once did. He told me that, I want to make the sustainable social change. Well, Ian, did you still remember what you said to me last time? No. I was so deeply impressed by this sense of courage, and I also believe that he was taken seriously. So
we'll give him an opportunity to respond in a minute.
All right.
Because as
He's getting
you
ready.
may have noticed by now, we have an audience of people who have attended the classes of which were offered, but also some people who come and wish you all the best in your future journeys. But if I may come back to the differences in class performance and as a result, of course, also the difference in how American students versus Chinese students interact with the teacher and also with each other. Is there, of course, it's determined by the way the system is operating and is set up, but do you see elements which you could advise your Chinese professors to do differently after being here?
There are so many differences between the two classroom cultures, we call it classroom cultures. Mm-hmm. And some people gave the two kind of cultures very interesting names. They call the American classroom culture is shepherding, mm-hmm. And the Chinese classroom culture is spoon feeding. Yeah. As far as I have experience in American classes, usually the teacher would put forward some inspiring questions, and the students would discuss in groups, sharing ideas and talking nonsense. Excuse me for saying so, but sometimes quite true. And the students might get
here or over there.
Both.
Yeah. And if the student get bored of the class, they would leave the classroom whenever they want, even in front of the teacher. Well, this is really unbelievable, because if we put this case in China, I think you will drive the teacher mad, and you really deserve a good beating or spanking. So the point I want to make here is that the American classroom culture is more relaxed, democratic, and dynamic and active, with high degree of respect for each idea and high degree of freedom of each student. But meanwhile, I think if not handled so well, the class may become superficial or even spin out of control. But compared with American classroom culture, I think our Chinese the Chinese, we pay more attention to the systematic study.
You do your homework, you mean?
Yeah, traditional. The traditional classes, like the teacher will follow some certain teaching programs, and the student just listen and carefully make the records. Questions are welcome, but not in the class, but after class. So, it really can help the student to establish systematic knowledge and lay a very solid foundation, but it's far less innovative, and the student may become the exam machines. So I think if we could combine these two together a little bit, perhaps 70% of American way and 30% of the Chinese way, it would be perfect.
Good mix.
Yeah, I do hope that our Chinese classes, one day, the teachers would get used to saying comments and questions instead of, well, clear or not. Yeah.
I just want to add that when Macy first arrived, you were early, right? Classes hadn't started. So you were here a lot. You came over and volunteered. And I remember one of the first days that there was a camera or some piece of equipment where you asked if there was a manual to learn how to, and you went online and found a manual and read the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, well, that's kind of impressive. I haven't seen any
I was
many
punishing
interns
myself.
come in
I was punishing myself.
You punished yourself well that day. But in general, though, we've all really enjoyed your presence, who you are, and what you brought to us here as an individual that did jump right in and do so many different things with us, and also became a good friend. And we're really very excited to have a new friend that will hopefully stay in touch. But when I was talking to you the other day, you had plans for your future. You're not quite sure where you would like to go. Do you want to talk a little bit about whether to continue with your education or what you would like to be doing?
Yeah, I will be graduating from my university as a master just next month in June. And actually, I'm at a crossroads of my life now, to pursue a PhD study or to get a job. Actually, I've been thinking about this for quite a long time. So far, the decision I have made is to get a job first, because I have been a student for more than 18 years. I don't get bored of it, but I really need a change. I want to have a new social status. So probably I will work for 2 or 3 years. Then through working, I will be more aware of myself, what kind of person I am, what fits me, what doesn't fit me, and what I'm really interested in, and what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I think until then I will make a second choice. Perhaps I will go back to America to pursue my PhD study.
Here in this country?
Yeah, perhaps Princeton.
Oh.
Why Princeton?
Because last time in August we spent 10 days in America, and Princeton was the most impressive.
Pretty.
Yeah, extreme place, I think.
Very, very nice place.
Okay, so you have something to look forward to, it sounds.
But what kind of work would you, excuse me, the work you were going to pursue for 2 or 3 years, you did tell me that you were hoping to...
Perhaps journalist, because my major is journalism.
Yeah. And would you want to be in China doing it, or would you like to travel?
In China first.
Are there enough jobs these days for journalists?
I don't think so.
So it's quite
it would be a
competitive.
tough time for me.
Yeah. Well, we wish you well on it.
Indeed, we can only wish you the best, and it's probably now a good opportunity to ask people in the audience to raise any questions they may still have. Anybody? Please.
Is there any special memory or amusing story that you will tell and take back to your friends and colleagues?
That's a dangerous question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that question sounds like a trap.
It's just television, don't worry.
You know, I have been asked so many questions here. Some questions are really weird. Well, some of the questions are very normal, like, are you the only one child in your family? Why do Chinese prefer boys to girls? And can you teach me Kung Fu and Tai Chi? And Why do you Chinese always fighting trees in your movies? Yeah, that's a question that Candace asked me yesterday. And
Bamboo trees.
Some of the questions are really weird, and there is one that really astonished me. Do you Chinese eat snakes? Why do you eat snakes? I really didn't know what they were talking about because we never eat snakes. I really don't know why they got this strange impression about China. Then I asked them back, why do Americans eat turkeys? Then the answer is, then they answered me that because the answer that I will never forget that because the dream of the turkey is to be eaten by Americans. So I never know that the dream of turkey is so ambitious. I never know that. I never know that.
Now we know.
Thanks for the explanation. Any more questions from the floor? If not, I wanted to thank you for your presence, your company.
Thank you.
Have been a very nice person around, always looking at the bright side of life.
And she actually gets our humor, which
Right.
is really a scary thought because most people can't follow us. So you not only did you come and learn the idioms, but you're actually using them now, right?
Really?
Yeah.
I'm freezing my ass off.
You're freezing your ass off. Perfect. Something to go home with, right? Macy, thank you for everything you've done with us. I
On
really
that
love it.
funny note, thanks and thank you for your interest.